Have you ever wished you could take back just one decision? Not because your life became difficult, but because you finally understood the pain you caused someone else. This is what happened to Emily. Months passed after Emily watched David walk away with his new wife. She tried to convince herself she had moved on. She changed apartments. She found a new job. She even deleted every photo she had of Ryan. But no matter how much she changed her surroundings, she couldn't escape herself. Every morning, she woke up with the same thought. What if I had simply gone home that day? One quiet Sunday afternoon, Emily opened an old wooden box hidden in the back of her closet. Inside were photographs from happier days, their wedding invitation, their honeymoon tickets, birthday cards David had written by hand. She smiled through tears as she realized something she had ignored for years. David had never stopped loving her. He had only been too busy trying to build the future they both wanted. For the first time, Emily wasn't crying because she had lost her marriage. She was crying because she finally understood her husband's sacrifices. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper. She didn't want David back. She knew that chapter was over. She simply wanted to say the words she should have said long ago. "I'm sorry." She spent hours writing the letter. She admitted every lie, every selfish decision, every excuse she had used to justify her choices. She thanked David for loving her even when she had stopped loving herself. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and placed it inside an envelope. The next morning, she stood outside David's office. The envelope trembled in her hands. She could walk inside. She could leave the letter with the receptionist. Or she could walk away forever. After several long minutes, she quietly placed the envelope into the building's mailbox and left without looking back. She didn't expect a reply. She didn't deserve one. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. The silence remained. Then one evening, after returning home from work, Emily noticed a small envelope waiting beneath her apartment door. There was no return address, only her name written in familiar handwriting. Her heart raced. She knew exactly who had written it. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten note. It read, "Thank you for your apology. I truly hope you find peace. I've already found mine." There was no anger, no blame, no invitation to meet again. Only forgiveness. Emily closed her eyes and held the letter against her heart. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not happiness, not relief, but peace. Sometimes closure doesn't come from getting someone back. Sometimes it comes from knowing that the person you hurt has finally healed. Emily folded David's letter and placed it beside her old wedding ring. Not as a reminder of what she had lost, but as a reminder of who she never wanted to become again. Because the hardest lesson life can teach is that forgiveness doesn't always rebuild a relationship. Sometimes, it simply sets two people free. Have you ever met someone who knew your darkest secret before you even said a word? Emily thought the worst chapter of her life had already ended. She was wrong, because one unexpected knock on her apartment door would force her to relive every mistake she had spent years trying to forget. 6 months had passed since David's letter arrived. Emily read those few handwritten words almost every night. Not because she hoped he would come back. She knew he never would. She read them because they reminded her that forgiveness and reconciliation were never the same thing. Life slowly became quieter. She found comfort in ordinary routines. She worked. She volunteered on weekends. She smiled more often. The guilt never disappeared. but it no longer controlled every breath she took. For the first time in years, Emily believed she was finally moving forward. Until one rainy Thursday evening, someone knocked on her apartment door. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, a young woman, no older than 24, stood silently in the hallway. She held a small envelope in one hand. Her eyes looked nervous. "Are you Emily Carter?" Emily nodded. The young woman swallowed hard before speaking again. "My name is Sophie. I think we need to talk." Emily had never seen her before. Yet something in Sophie's voice made her heart race. She invited her inside. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Sophie placed an old photograph on the table. Emily froze. It was a picture from years ago. She, David, and Ryan, taken at a charity event long before everything fell apart. Emily looked up in confusion. "How did you get this?" Sophie took a slow breath. "I used to work for Ryan." The room suddenly felt colder. Emily hadn't heard Ryan's name in years. She never wanted to hear it again. But Sophie wasn't finished. "He passed away 3 months ago." Emily couldn't say a word. Not because she still loved Ryan, but because some names instantly awaken memories you've spent years trying to bury. Sophie continued softly. "Before he died, he left a box. And inside that box, there was a letter with your name on it." Emily stared at the envelope in disbelief. Her hands trembled as Sophie slid it across the table. "I didn't know if I should bring it, but I thought, you deserve to decide whether to read it." Then Sophie quietly stood. Before leaving, she looked back one last time. "Whatever is inside, I hope it finally gives you peace." The apartment became silent once again. Emily stared at the unopened envelope for almost an hour. Every instinct told her to throw it away. Ryan had already taken enough from her. Why let him hurt her one more time? But another voice whispered, "What if this is the last unanswered question?" Slowly, she opened it. Inside was only one page. Ryan's handwriting was unmistakable. The first sentence made Emily stop breathing. "I owe you the truth." Her eyes filled with tears. Ryan admitted something he had never confessed while he was alive. He had known David was trying to save their marriage. He knew David had been secretly working 2 jobs. He knew every late night at the office wasn't about ambition. It was about paying off debts so Emily could keep the home she loved. Ryan knew all of it. And he never told her. Instead, he used Emily's loneliness to pull her further away. He admitted he never planned a future together. He simply enjoyed winning someone else's wife. Emily dropped the letter. Her body shook with silent sobs. For years, she had blamed herself. Now she realized something even more painful. She had been manipulated. But manipulation didn't erase responsibility. No one forced her to betray David. The choice had still been hers. That truth hurt more than anything else. Hours later, Emily returned the letter to its envelope. She walked to her fireplace. For several long seconds, she watched the flames dance. Then she placed Ryan's final letter into the fire. She didn't burn it out of hatred. She burned it because she no longer wanted her future to be controlled by someone who had already stolen enough from her past. The paper slowly turned to ash. Emily whispered quietly, "You don't get to write the ending of my story." The next morning, she made another decision. Not about love. Not about David. About herself. She enrolled in a counseling program for people recovering from betrayal and destructive relationships. Not as a patient. As a volunteer. Week after week, she listened to strangers tell stories that sounded painfully familiar. Some had been betrayed. Every single one carried invisible scars. One evening, after a support meeting ended, an elderly woman approached Emily. "You always tell everyone they're stronger than their mistakes." Emily smiled gently. "I believe that." The woman looked into Emily's eyes and asked quietly, "Then when will you believe it about yourself?" Emily couldn't answer. Not yet. She drove home in silence. As she parked outside her apartment, she noticed a small package resting against her front door. No sender. No return address. Inside was a simple wooden photo frame. There was no photograph. Only a handwritten note. "It's time to create a new memory." Emily looked around the empty street. Who left it there? She never found out. But that empty frame stayed on her shelf. Not as a reminder of what she had lost, but as a promise that one day it would hold a memory untouched by lies, betrayal, or regret. Because healing isn't the moment you stop crying. Healing begins the moment you finally believe your future doesn't have to look like your past. But Emily had no idea. Someone from David's new life had just begun asking questions about the woman he never talked about. And sooner than she imagined, their paths would cross again. Not because of unfinished love, but because of an unexpected truth that neither of them was prepared to face.